Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Young Professionals webinar series. Today, we have a very interesting webinar given to us from Armando Biondi on the ideation and validation for entrepreneurial success. I will be talking to him, introducing him in the coming slides. But before we get started, I wanted to kind of introduce myself. My name is Matthew Carius. I'm the webinar specialist for the NGA Young Professionals Global Board. I'm also the vice chair for the communications and marketing team for the Young Professionals Global Committee. And in case you haven't noticed, we've been giving monthly webinars in 2015, started in 2014, on a variety of topics: effective communication, leadership, and selected topics. And this is one of our first actual webinars on entrepreneurship, and so I'm very excited to kind of kick this off. In terms of audience participation, please, during the entire webinar, it's going to be a very interactive webinar. Type in your questions at any time right below. We have a little question box there. You can even put where your question is coming from. So if you're in India, Italy, Europe, anywhere in North America, make sure you tag your location so that we can actually know how to answer your question a little bit better. So please, shoot us questions anytime. I'll be relaying them back to Armando, and it's going to be actually a very interactive webinar. But right before we get started, just wanted to give you guys a heads up. We have a free meetup event at global conferences. So we're actually going to be trying to have these young professional meetup, IEEE Young Professional, kind of high impact conferences around the world. So Web Summit in Dublin in November, and then we have IEEE TechCon in Macau in November, and then we have South by Southwest obviously was in Region 5, and we're actually going to have a very big presence at CES this year, or in 2016, so the first week of January in 2016. So just be on the lookout for these free meetup events at global conferences that we're actually going to be hosting. Please connect with us online. You can get all the information you want for young professionals online on our Facebook page, Twitter, LinkedIn, and of course YouTube, where we have almost 100 videos posted. And if in case you haven't noticed, we have a couple of career-based services for IEEE young professionals, and I'll be talking about those at the end of the webinar. Please stick around at the end of the webinar to hear more about that. And here we go. So here's an introduction to our speaker. He's co-founder and COO of Espresso, which of course he's going to be telling us about. But just in short, it's a fast-growing software as a service solution for Facebook ads optimization. He's previously co-founded 5 other tech and non-tech companies. He served as an angel investor in Watermark and over 30 other companies. And of course, he's been a former radio speaker and now a webinar speaker. So, kind of a short and sweet abstract for this webinar will be on validating ideas of the age of hypergrowth. So what are the secrets behind Slack, Uber, and Zenefit? And, keeping in mind, this is going to be a very highly interactive webinar. We have no slides. So please keep those questions coming in. And I'm going to hand it off to Armando right now. Armando?
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me as well. Yeah, so the whole idea of this webinar is to have a conversation on where technology is going and what's changed compared to a few years ago. And so some of the things that not a lot of people realize or understand very well, which are actually very have a very high impact on the businesses. So that's where we are going to start from. Yeah, a little bit more on me and on Espresso. I mean, you said the basics already. We do Facebook advertising optimization. We focus on small and medium businesses and small and medium enterprises, specifically people that are spending between 5 and 50K per month in Facebook advertising budget. That's our sweet spot. And we essentially produce a lot of content for them to learn how to do Facebook advertising efficiently. That's also our go-to-market strategy and how they find us. So the typical use case is that people with not a lot of expertise, but with a budget and with a company search for things like, I don't know, 10 tips to improve your Facebook advertising click-through rate, and find our content that get value out of the content, and then discover that there is an actual product behind them that could help them do a better job with that. So they sign up. With this model, we are now serving more than 1,000 customers. We are the fastest growing company in the space, the top of mind. When it comes to Facebook advertising, we are also the company that's generating the highest number of monthly uniques. So pretty fun. About me, yeah, I'm co-founder of the company. I'm the COO of the company as well, and I'm also not only angel investor, as you were mentioning, in around 30 companies, but also guest contributor for a few news outlets out there. So I wrote for Business Insider, for VentureBeat, for Entrepreneurial.com, and for Fast Company. And you know, I have a non-technical background, so I focus on everything that's, you know, operational and business related, and also, you know, of course, funding related. And so to go to the topic of this, we're going to go like probably 15 minutes at this point, and then if you have conversation, as we were saying, feel free to shoot them, so that we can make this, you know, the least boring possible. So a few things that now the founders realized that changed is that three things mainly related to the fact that as of now, as of today, there are a lot of more people online compared to 10 years ago. Actually 10x more people online compared to 15 years ago. So we went from 290 millions to almost 3 billions of people online, and everybody's pretty much connected on a mobile and to the internet, which are two of the fastest growing technologies ever. So what this means is that pretty much now everybody's pretty much nowadays reachable with, you know, a tap of the phone or with a click. That means that if you look at this from a business standpoint, this is actually this actually means that acquisition strategies and acquisition channels are the most efficient ever. So if you have a business idea or a business product or a company that's producing a service or, you know, a solution, you can reach the highest number of people the fastest ever. At the same time, the cost of starting something is the lowest ever, right? If you look at, you know, people starting companies 10 years ago, they would raise like $5 to $10 million just to put the product out of the door. And that's very different compared to nowadays, because nowadays you have every software or infrastructure as a service. Think of AWS, right? But pretty much everything has been packaged and miniaturized for people, for businesses to spend the least amount of money possible for these infrastructure services. So to actually create something, again, is the fastest and cheapest that's ever been, which is good and bad. So a couple consequences of this are, one, of course, there are a lot of new companies, which is good for everybody because a lot of new ideas can be created compared to 5 to 10 years ago. The downside of that is that since there are a lot of more companies and a lot of more founders, it's also a much more crowded space. Right, so pretty much every space has more companies. So as a consumer or as a business that need a certain type of service, how do I decide which company is good for me? Another not well understood consequence of this is that since everything is so cheap and since everything is so efficient and since industries are so crowded, nowadays, what really makes the difference is the go-to-market strategy. So how do you reach your customers? How do you get in front of them? How do you make them aware of the existence of your product compared to the other 10s that are out there, right? So that another non-super well understood consequence of this new way of doing things, which is the fact that marketing nowadays is super, super, super important, and essentially more than marketing in general, the inbound part of marketing, right? There are two main categories when you talk about marketing. One is the inbound approach, and the other one is the outbound approach. The outbound approach is when you call somebody saying, hey, I have this solution. Is this good for you? Do you want to buy? The inbound approach is when you make yourself searchable and visible to your customers when they are looking for something like you. So, for example, the way we do marketing is, as I was mentioning before, creating a lot of content. So every time that somebody search for, Facebook advertising split testing on Google, if you go there now and you perform this search, you will see that what comes out is as first result is one of our blog posts and our website, right? So when people search for that, they find us. And by looking at our content, they understand if and how we are a good fit for them. So we essentially pre-qualified them. So they understand if that's something that can be useful for them, and that's already a step down the purchase funnel for us and for any company that's using this approach. So it's a very different playground compared to 5 to 10 years ago. And as a consequence to this, another of the non-super well understood changes, so most efficient acquisition channels ever, lowest cost of creating something, importance of the marketing part. Another element that I didn't mention is the availability and commoditization of capital. So every geographical area nowadays, every part of the world nowadays has some degree of availability of capital and of investment ecosystem. That means that you can raise your first couple 150K pretty much everywhere, right? Leveraging your own network and without the need to move anywhere else. Lots of people are still, thinking about the Silicon Valley like the place you need to go if you want to raise capital. That's not true anymore. The consequence of the things that we were saying is that actually Silicon Valley is not the place anymore to start a company. It's not the best place to be because it's so expensive to stay here, because it's so crowded since everybody's here and want to raise money here, and because it's so noisy, right? Because there are another 1,000 companies that raise $1 million or are generating $1 million in revenue, and you're competing against them. While if you start something in a less crowded area, there are a lot of them in the world that are still technology hubs, but not as sophisticated and as crowded as Silicon Valley, you have actually bigger chances to stand out. And you have actually less expenses because living outside of the Silicon Valley is actually convenient compared to the Silicon Valley, and hiring as well. Here, you pay the average entry-level developer around 150K per year dollars. That's probably 1/3 of the vast majority of the other areas around the world. So as an entrepreneur, it means that if you raise $1 million outside of the Silicon Valley, is actually worth 3 times what you would use here in San Francisco, right? So this is also another one of the things that changed a lot in the last 5 to probably 5 years, and it's something that's still happening. It's something that's still changing. So the Silicon Valley moving to a more sophisticated ecosystem, focusing on more advanced companies, while other technology hubs are emerging. Think about New York, think about Los Angeles, Boulder, Austin in the United States, and then London and Berlin and Israel and Hong Kong around the world, right? So this is the new playground. This is where new entrepreneurs or people founding their own new companies are actually moving nowadays. So consequences of this is the fact that while 5 years ago you needed a product to actually offer a service and reach a certain number of people, or you wanted to. So the typical mechanism 5 years ago was, I go on and raise a couple $1 million, and then I develop a product, and then I get my first 10 enterprise customers or 1,000 small and medium businesses, and then I go raise the following round. Nowadays is actually a reversed mechanism. So nowadays, the smartest people and the smartest companies are validating ideas without the product yet, without the technology yet, because developing technology is very expensive and very slow. While since we now live in this hyper-connected and very efficient marketplace where everything is happening in real time, and I can reach out, one more million people like me with just an email or just a Facebook strategy, I don't really need the product anymore upfront. What I need is the capacity to actually execute on that. So if I can get in front of 1 million people offering a service or a product that doesn't really exist yet, but I'm doing things manually to understand what they actually need and what they're willing to pay for, and to leverage that information to develop the actual product and the actual technology, that's the smartest way to go as of now. And that also means, so this is what's happening for the most interesting companies right now. The vast majority of them at the beginning have nothing. The vast majority of them at the beginning have spreadsheets or people that are doing manually the things that they want to automate. And that also means that technology nowadays, so every company is a technology company in some regards, but technology nowadays is not the advantage anymore. Everybody can develop a product, right? And this goes also to our title, for Uber. Technology is not really the advantage. It's not the app. Everybody can develop the same app. The advantage is the liquidity of the marketplace and the capital that they raise and the speed of execution. It's not technology. Same things for Airbnb, if you think about that, right? Yeah, technology is a leverage. Technology is the way through which the same service that you can offer or the same product that you can give to 10 people goes out to 10 million people instead, right? So that's the purpose of technology nowadays and the reason for it. So about hypergrowth and about the secret behind the fact that these companies are growing super aggressively, they are vastly leveraging the changes that I was mentioning before, because it's easier than ever to reach customers if you have a good product. The great companies nowadays grow 15, 20x year over year, right? So 1 year you're doing $1 million in revenue, the following year you're doing 20 millions. On one side, they are leveraging this most efficient approach in the market. On the other side, they usually have like another added layer on top. So for example, Zenefit has basically a free product. So the most they are able to reach customers, the most they sell. That's it. Airbnb has a killer user experience. Uber as well, killer user experience and killer idea, because with just one tap of your iPhone, you can know at any time how many minutes you are from your car, right? That's going to bring you somewhere else. So how do you leverage this when you're starting something, when you're validating something, when you're thinking of something, if it can be good for you or not as a founder? That's a big question. And the answer that I give nowadays, the vast majority of the time, is just talk to your customer, offer them what they're asking for, what you think that they want, in a very manual, very non-technological way, and then use that knowledge to actually expand your reach, right? Because if you have 10 customers and they are paying you $50 per month each for something that maybe, again, you're doing manually on the background and cost 10 times that much, but you see the potential to automate that process, then you can go from 10 to 100 and from 100 to 1,000, from 1,000 to 10,000 while you build the technology to do that. And technology works for you as a way to optimize processes and scale the business. But it's not the other way around. It's not anymore, spending 6 months building a product and then getting that product in front of customers, maybe burning in the meantime $1 million, right? It's not anymore the most efficient way to do things. And this is particularly important if you are starting something nowadays compared to 5 years ago. Do we have questions?
I can probably start off the questions. I have a couple of my own. So just again, reminding to everyone watching, please just go ahead and type in your questions. I'll be checking those periodically. Actually, a lot more than periodically. But I just wanted. So you talked about Airbnb, Uber, and how well they have a clear user experience. How yes, they do. That's without a doubt. Maybe you could talk a little bit more on the importance of timing for those technologies. And I think you did touch on it a little bit in terms of why they did so well, is because the market was very receptive to people sharing their own apartments, people sharing their own cars. It was maybe you could talk a little bit more about that and how timing plays into the role of entrepreneurial success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so timing is super important. Because if you are in a growing market and if you are leveraging a new customer behavior in the most efficient way, your life is going to be like 10 times, if not 100 times easier versus the opposite, right? So both, the three of these companies did that in a very efficient way. And this goes to their execution ability, right? But it's also important to remember that market can take years to get there, and in the meantime, everything can happen, right? If you look at the Airbnb story, the guys were selling cereals at the beginning to generate cash flow for them, and they were a very scrappy solution with just a website and just to capture people interested in what they were doing, and then they would get in touch with them and visit their actual houses and take pictures and facilitate the transaction between people wanting to stay somewhere and people wanting to generate some cash flow from their home, right? So this goes back to the example that was mentioning about technology being a leverage and being the way through which you scale a business model that works, not the other way around. Unless you're the exception, of course, but not everybody can be the exception unless you're Snapchat or other companies. But again, there are like probably 60 to 100,000 companies that are created every year, and there is one Snapchat over several years, right? So not every company can be the exception. So yeah, does that answer to your question?
That's good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's perfect. So another question coming in. So you mentioned San Francisco is 3 times. You need 3 times as much money as anywhere else in the world. So I guess if you can pick one place to be in the world for a tech company, I guess where should you be? Where should you locate? I know it's kind of an open-ended question.
Yeah. So the way I talk very often to people that come visit San Francisco and the Silicon Valley for like 1 week or 1 month with the idea of fundraising. And what I tell them and what I've been telling them for a year now is that San Francisco and the Silicon Valley is the best place in the world to scale companies. It's not the best place in the world anymore to start companies, right? Because here you are in the Champions League if you follow, soccer, or in the Olympics of the startup ecosystem, right? But that means also, so you have capital, you have talent, you have exit opportunities, which are the upsides. Then there are the downsides, because no place is perfect, and so there is also a lot of noise, and it's a very crowded space, and it's a very expensive place, because it's not only the hiring expenses, it's also the office expenses, because real estate here is crazy. Here you pay for a one bedroom nowadays around $3,500 per month. So it's very expensive to hire. It's very expensive to stay here. When can you afford to do that? When does it make sense from a company standpoint, from an entrepreneur standpoint, to do that? When you have some level of product market fit, when you have some level of revenue, when you have some level of funding. So the typical advice is, start somewhere else where you are, raise the first couple $150K where you are. Generate the first product market fit, so the first revenue where you are, and then if you want, move to a tech hub, a tier 2 tech hub like London, Berlin, Israel, Hong Kong, Santiago del Chile, or other cities in the United States. And maybe if again you are one of those few companies that can scale and become $100 million companies in revenue or more, then the Silicon Valley is really the best place for you to be. Before that, it depends on what you want to do, your ambition, and even more where you stand in terms of company. So tier 2 tech hubs can be a very good entry point. So again, the ones that we were mentioning before, if you want to move there, they're kind of expensive. There is a kind of good or kind of great ecosystem there, both in terms of talent and capital. But you have to be aware that the higher the tech hub, the more expensive it gets, the more competitive it gets. Right. So if you ask me, you can literally start everywhere else or anywhere else in the world right now, because with an internet connection, you can reach out 3 billion people. Right? If you're doing a consumer thing, if you're doing a B2B thing, and if you're thinking of a product idea or a service idea, that's something that you see the need for, they are very, very much likely another 1 million people like you, right? So if you have 1 million people as a potential out of 3 billion that can give you $50 per month, that's an interesting business.
That's actually an excellent answer in my opinion. So maybe the question coming in, maybe about something you started talking about in the beginning, how I guess exit strategies are changing a little bit in terms of everyone is just getting acquired now. And you mentioned that it's because now we have 3 billion people online. Maybe you see, or so like why aren't companies just growing on their own anymore? Why Facebook is acquiring everyone, Google's acquiring everyone. Maybe you can talk a little about that.
Yeah, so I don't think that's the case. I think that there is not an acquisition spree or an M&A spree right now, but because there are more companies around and they are on average more advanced and they generate on average more revenue, and there are more entrepreneurs around, you see more acquisitions as well. But M&A activity is actually slowing down and is moving farther down along in the funnel. So that while 3 years ago you saw Yahoo with Marissa Mayer acquiring pretty much everybody's around, they are not doing that anymore. While 3 to 5 years ago, you would essentially acqui-hire companies, so acquiring them for the team and paying back the investors and giving a nice bonus to the founders in the 5 to 10, maybe $15 million range. Nowadays, the vast majority of the M&A activity is happening around the $50 million mark and more. So that's as a quick perspective on how M&A is evolving in this new ecosystem. But I do think that if you are starting a company to sell it under $25 million, you probably should be doing something else. Because
that's good advice.
It's very, very, being acquired is unlikely because every acquisition nowadays, of course, always with disclaimer of the exceptions, but again, you cannot count on being the exception every time. So on average, companies get acquired either for the technology or for the revenue or for the team or for a combination of the three, right? If you are doing an acquisition, it's mostly technology and team or only team, but those are the ones with the least value. So below, again, $10 million. If you want to do something that's meaningful, or if you want to acquire a company in a meaningful way, let's say between 25 and 100 millions, it's always a combination of the talent, always a combination of the IP, so the technology, and always a combination of revenue as well. So what's the revenue multiple? Let's say 10x to simplify. It can change from industry to industry, but let's say 10x. So to get acquired at $100 million, you need to have a company that's generating $10 million in a year, which means $800,000 per month, right? So how do you get there? And even more importantly, if you do get there, it's actually easier to grow that company versus starting another one. So once that you get there, once that you have a company that's generating $10 million, maybe you see the opportunity to go from $10 million 1 year to 20 the following years, or to 25 the following years, which means that the valuation of the company is $250 million the following years. So if you see that opportunity, why should you sell at 100 millions?
Exactly. That's actually a good point. We actually have one question coming here and from India. Mm-hmm. What can be done to keep up with the changing trends? The idea that you have this company, you founded this company, and then you're putting all this time and effort and money into the first couple of years, but then in another 2 or 3 years after that, it can be proven to be useless because the trend is changing. So what can be done to modify the product or service according to changing trends? So any
that's a good question.
Pointers on that?
So, a few thoughts on that. So first, thoughts number one, every company that works needs 4 to 7 years to actually become something meaningful. So in 4 to 7 years, with the pace of speed right now, everything is going to change 5 times, right? So that's where we are playing right now. The consequence of that is that you should start something that's meaningful to you and or to your experience or background, because again, if there is and if you can get 10 customers, there is 1 million of them in the world, right? So if you get 10 customers to pay you on whatever idea, there are likely 1 million or more that can pay you for the same concept, right? On the flip side, so while you focus on this as an entrepreneur, in the market is going, everything is going to happen. This morning, the Chinese market is crashing, and so every investor is concerned about this. Actually, more than concerned, very worried, or freaking out about this. But what does it mean for entrepreneurs? Frankly, it doesn't mean nothing, because as an entrepreneur, your focus should be on growing the business regardless of what happens in the market. And if you're a good company, good companies are going to thrive anyway, regardless of the market conditions. If you're a shitty company, shitty companies are going to die anywhere, anywhere and anyway, regardless of the market conditions, right? And final thought on that is, every company, every founder is kind of fighting against becoming obsolete because of the market, or because of the competitors, or because of the company itself. So that's a typical behavior of companies, of businesses and markets, because if you don't continuously develop your product, competitors are going to catch up. If you fuck something up, or you spend all the money that you got, or you fight with your co-founders, the company is going to implode. If the market changes significantly, your company potentially is going to die. So what you can do, so this is what can happen, but you don't have control on all of these things. You don't have control on competitors. You don't have control on the market. So, and the vast majority of the companies die not because of the market or because of the competitors, but because of themselves, because of the founders, because of the team, because they were not committed enough, because they were not focused enough, because they were not good enough, right? So what you can do is, be focused enough, be committed enough, be good enough. And if you can do that, you will be able to to stay on top of the market and change and adapt based on what's happening. And there is always something happening every time, somewhere. So the question is not, is something happening? The question is that relevant for you? Should you do something about that or not? And the answer is going to change based on the stage you're in. Because if you have, a tiny little company that just started out with 3 people and 3 customers and maybe 100K in funding, you can do things that are different if you have 25 people and $2 million in revenue and $2 million in funding, right? So the focus is really on, if you ask me as an entrepreneur, how do you deliver on the growth that you need to keep your company alive? And that growth should be between 15 and 25% month over month. So if you can grow 20% month over month for 4 years, that's 48 times. It's not something crazy. That's a $100 million company that you have right there. So a $1 billion company, right? So the question is, can you do that? Can you grow 20% this month, and the next month, and the following one?
That's some good advice. We have a couple more questions coming in from Supriya in the United States. I am in the power center working for an electrical utility company in the US. I'm originally from India and would like to go back and also stay in the same industry. I see that there hasn't been many changes in this technology in this area anywhere. Any thoughts?
I'm not sure I understand that. So on the fact that there are not that many changes.
Yeah, in terms of power sector technology. So I guess electrical utility or I guess that would be like.
I'm not super expert on that specific industry, but I do think is that pretty much everything is changing right now, because technology is reimagining every industry, every sector in every place of the world. If this is not the case, so if there are areas where technology is not doing that, that means that there is an opportunity to do it. If things don't appear to be changing that much, either there are companies you're not aware of that are doing it while you don't know it, or if you do the research and there are no actual companies that are doing it, that's a big opportunity to do something new.
That's actually very good advice. Again, looking at that opportunity. One here question from Thomas from Greece. I think it's a good question. Do you have any favorite processes for validating investments or ventures? How do you decide when to pull the plug? Airbnb founders made a lot of patience before they actually did grow, as you mentioned before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the investor relationship is a tricky one because. This is another topic. So on one side, you need money to grow your business as a founder, and investors have money. On the other side, and so you may feel, kind of dependent on them. On the other side, venture capital is essentially a service business. So venture capital gets his return from successful companies and need successful companies to exist. So, and their whole strategy is predicated on finding the successful company and investing in them. So, if you are a successful founder, if you are generating revenue, if you are maybe profitable, you are in a position to be much more pickier on the investors you get involved with. And that's probably the best advice that I would give to anybody that's raising money. Because nowadays, again, since it's so easy to access potential customers and get them to pay for something that may be of interest to them, do that. It's easier to get money from customers that need your software or your service or your solution compared to investors, because investors reason on different logics and have different drivers of action, right? So best way to the whole way of saying that the best way to raise money is that you don't need to raise money is sure. And nowadays you can do that. Lots of people can, pretty much everybody can, in the right conditions or doing the right thing, so not fucking up, can make, a couple $100,000 in revenue in a year. The question to me, and anybody can raise a couple 100,000, maybe 250,000 in funding. The question to me nowadays is, are you able, and how do you do that, to go from 200K in revenue per year to 2 million the following year, and then 20 million 2 years afterwards? That's a real question to me. That said, it's easier to talk to investors and to get money from investors if you have a relationship with them. So if you knew them before that, and or if you have a success case, and or if you are generating revenue.
It's again very good, helpful advice. I don't see any more questions coming in, and it's been almost 45 minutes of this webinar. Armando, thank you very much for everything. I think I'm gonna slowly cut it off here. I don't want to go too much longer again. So thank you very much for everything. So for those of you still on the line with us, please complete our thanks. Please complete our feedback survey. Our next webinar is going to be on this coming Wednesday. Michael Condrey is going to be talking about understanding an industry technical staff pipeline. So again, the other side of starting a business. How do you deal with your technical staff? Very interesting webinar. Please check out our career-based services for young professionals, the Mentor Center, where we kind of link you up with somebody in your in your same field, and the IEEE Resume Lab, in which we have all these tips and tricks to make your resume stand out. And again, even having some interview help with you too. Interested in presenting a webinar? Please shoot us an email shown there, and from that, I would just like to thank you, Armando, again for everything. And I want to sign off on this webinar. All right. Take care, everyone. Thank
Bye.
you for participating.